The winds of Zanthera, 7 screamed through the jagged ravines, carrying grit sharp enough to cut skin. Captain Nathan Briggs wiped a layer of dust from his visor, scanning the desolate landscape. His boots crunched against the sharp gravel as his team descended from the transport, their equipment laden with mission-critical supplies. The air tasted metallic even through the filtered rebreathers, a reminder that this planet wasn't meant for human lungs. "Eyes up," Briggs ordered, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. "Sensors are worthless out here, so we'll rely on old-fashioned vigilance." "Great," grumbled Mike Duke Callahan, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. Blind and walking into a death trap. Just another day in the Corps. Briggs shot him a sidelong glance, but let the comment slide. Duke's sarcasm was a constant, and in its own way, it kept the team grounded. Behind them, Sergeant Maria Doc Owens crouched by a jagged boulder, scanning the surroundings with a handheld bioscanner. Her gloved fingers adjusted the dials with practiced precision. "Nothing yet," Doc murmured, though her furrowed brow betrayed her concern. "But this place feels wrong." "It's a rock," Duke quipped. "A big, ugly, alien rock." "Big Jake," Briggs called over the wind. "What's the status on our comms?" Jacob Big Jake Carter, a hulking figure with grease-streaked armor, was hunched over the array's control unit. "Not good. Cap electromagnetic interference is frying everything. Best I can do is short-range comms, and even that's spotty." Briggs cursed under his breath. They were isolated on a planet where everything, from the terrain to the air, seemed to resist their presence. Still, they had a job to do: secure the area and establish a forward base for resource extraction. With humanity locked in a war for survival, every mission counted. They made their way toward a plateau where the terrain leveled out, the only place stable enough for their equipment. The journey was tense, each shadow and gust of wind setting their nerves on edge. Briggs felt it too, that prickling sensation on the back of his neck that screamed danger. He had learned long ago to trust it. The first attack came without warning. A shriek tore through the air, high-pitched and unnatural, as a creature burst from the jagged rocks. It was a nightmare of metal and flesh, its segmented body glinting in the dim light. Razor-sharp appendages tore into the nearest soldier before anyone could react, and the man's scream was cut short in a spray of crimson. "Contact!" Briggs shouted, raising his rifle. His team snapped into action, unloading a barrage of gunfire. Bullets pinged off the creature's armored carapace, barely slowing it down. "Fall back!" Briggs barked, motioning toward a nearby canyon. They moved as a unit, covering each other as more of the creatures emerged from the shadows. The aliens moved with an eerie precision, their eyes glowing with cold intelligence. Duke swung his rifle around, letting loose a burst of armor-piercing rounds. "These things don't die easy." Doc ducked behind a rock, firing her sidearm while dragging a wounded soldier to cover. "Keep moving. We're sitting ducks out here." As they reached the canyon's mouth, Big Jake turned and hurled a grenade. The explosion rocked the ground, momentarily halting the aliens' advance. The team plunged into the narrow ravine, the walls towering on either side. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them, a constant reminder that they were being hunted. They found a temporary refuge in a small alcove, the tight space forcing the aliens to halt their charge. Briggs counted heads, 6 left, down from the original 10. He clenched his jaw, pushing the grief aside. There was no time for it. "What the hell were those things?" Duke demanded, his voice shaking despite his bravado. "Zarkesh," Doc said grimly, inspecting the bloodied soldier beside her. "Biomechanical predators. Smart, fast, and apparently impervious to most of our weapons." Briggs knelt beside her. "Weaknesses?" Doc shook her head. "Not many. But they're biological, which means they must have some vulnerability. We just have to find it." "We don't have the luxury of time," Briggs said, his tone clipped. "Jake, inventory. What do we have left?" Big Jake opened his pack, revealing a mix of salvageable gear, explosives, damage sensors, and a few tools. Not much, but I can work with it. Briggs studied the supplies, his mind racing. Doc, can those scanners of yours pick up anything useful? Frequencies, signals, anything? Doc adjusted her bioscanner, the screen flickering as she fine-tuned the settings. Her face lit up with sudden realization. High-frequency sound waves. Their armor might deflect bullets, but it vibrates under certain wavelengths. Enough resonance could disorient them, maybe even crack their exoskeletons. That's a start, Briggs said. Jake, see if you can rig something up. Duke, you're on perimeter. Keep those things out of here. Duke gave a mock salute. You got it, Cap. I'll just hold off the alien apocalypse single-handedly. While Jake and Doc worked, Briggs took a moment to assess his team. They were battered and shaken, but not broken. It was a testament to human resilience, a trait Briggs had seen tested time and again. He crouched beside the injured soldier, offering a steadying hand. We're not done yet. Stay with us. Minutes later, Jake held up a crude device cobbled together from spare parts. Sonic grenade. Ugly as sin, but it should work. Briggs nodded. Good. Let's test it. The next attack came swiftly. The Zares descended into the canyon, their movements unerringly coordinated. Duke fired a warning shot, and Briggs lobbed the sonic grenade into the oncoming swarm. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and the creatures faltered, their sleek bodies convulsing. Light them up, Briggs ordered. The team opened fire, and this time, the bullets found their mark. The aliens' disoriented movements left gaps in their armor, and one by one they fell. When the last creature hit the ground, an eerie silence settled over the canyon. Briggs lowered his weapon, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Doc, analysis? It worked, she said, though her expression remained grim. But they'll adapt. They always do. Then we'll adapt faster, Briggs said, his voice firm. This is their turf, but we'll make it ours. One way or another. As the team regrouped, Briggs felt a flicker of something rare on this godforsaken planet. Hope. They were bloodied but alive, and they had learned one crucial lesson. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons, but in their ability to outthink the enemy. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying away the echoes of battle. For now, they had bought themselves a chance. It would have to be enough. The canyon walls loomed like jagged teeth as the team moved deeper into the labyrinthine terrain. Each step felt heavier, the weight of their survival resting on every decision. The bodies of the fallen Zares lay behind them, their metallic sheen dulled by blood and dust. For now, the creatures had withdrawn, but the uneasy silence pressed against the team like a predator stalking its prey. Captain Nathan Briggs led the way, his rifle steady in his hands, his eyes scanning for movement. Jake, Briggs said, his voice low but firm, give me an update. Big Jake Carter, trudging a few steps behind, shifted the pack of salvaged alien components on his back. We've got enough parts to tinker, but I'm going to need time. These gadgets don't exactly come with an instruction manual. Briggs nodded. Time was the one thing they didn't have, but Jake's resourcefulness had pulled them out of tight spots before. He glanced back at Doc Owens, who was walking beside their injured comrade, Private Keller. Keller's pallor had worsened, and though Doc had stabilized him with field care, they both knew he wasn't likely to survive without proper medical attention. How's he holding up? Briggs asked. Doc looked up, her hazel eyes betraying exhaustion. Barely. If we don't get him out of here soon, we'll be carrying him. We're not leaving anyone behind, Briggs said. His tone left no room for argument. Duke Callahan brought up the rear, his rifle sweeping the shadows with nervous energy. So, what's the plan, Cap? We hunker down and pray, or do we go full John Wayne and take the fight to those tin bugs? Briggs stopped at a clearing, motioning for the team to set up a temporary perimeter. We need to figure out how to kill them before they kill us. Jake, get to work on that hardware. Doc, keep studying those samples. Duke, keep watch. If anything moves, you tell me. On it, Duke said, though the tension in his voice was palpable. As Jake unpacked the salvage parts, Doc joined him, her bioscanner humming softly. Briggs knelt by a piece of alien debris, its surface etched with strange geometric patterns. He ran his fingers over the markings, wondering if they were a language or something more abstract. These creatures weren't mindless. They were engineered with purpose, designed for precision and destruction. They're communicating somehow, Doc murmured, her gaze fixed on the scanner. The pheromone trails are part of it, but there's an electromagnetic signal too. It's like they're broadcasting orders to each other. Jake grunted, connecting two wires that sparked with a faint blue light. If they're talking, we can jam the signal. Might throw their coordination out the window, and buy us enough time to strike, Briggs said, his mind racing. Can you rig something portable? Give me a couple hours, Jake replied. This tech's alien, but it's not magic. Let's hope it's enough, Briggs said, rising to his feet. The hours stretched thin as Jake worked on the jammer, his broad hands deftly manipulating wires and circuits. Doc analyzed the fragments of Zarkesh exoskeleton they'd collected, her voice a steady hum of scientific jargon as she shared her findings with Briggs. Duke paced the perimeter, muttering under his breath. The first warning came as a faint vibration under their boots. Cap, Duke called, his voice sharp. We've got movement. South Ridge. Briggs was already moving, his rifle raised. He peered through the scope and saw a flash of movement, a glint of metallic carapace disappearing into the rocks. They're scouting us, he said grimly. Jake, how much longer? 10 minutes, Jake said without looking up. Maybe less if you stop asking. Briggs turned to Duke. Set the claymores. If they come at us, we funnel them into the kill zone. Duke nodded, pulling explosives from his pack. The rest of the team fell into defensive positions, their breathing shallow, every sound amplified in the stillness. The tension was electric, every second stretching into eternity. When the Zarkesh came, they came in force. The first wave burst from the rocks, their segmented bodies moving with terrifying speed. The claymores detonated in a deafening roar, shredding the front ranks, but more poured through the smoke. Briggs fired in controlled bursts, aiming for the weak points Doc had identified. His shots landed true, but for every alien that fell, 2 more replaced it. Jake, now would be a good time, Briggs shouted. Jake slammed the final component into place and flipped a switch. The makeshift jammer emitted a low hum that quickly built into a piercing whine. The effect was immediate. The Zarkesh faltered, their movements erratic. Some collided with each other, while others convulsed violently. They're scrambling, Doc shouted, her voice tinged with hope. Light them up, Briggs ordered. The team unleashed a withering hail of gunfire. Duke whooped as his rounds punched through alien armor with satisfying precision. Doc, ever the multitasker, alternated between firing her pistol and tossing sonic grenades. Jake, now freed from his tinkering, hefted a modified shotgun, the weapon spitting incendiary rounds that left a trail of burning alien ichor. Despite the chaos, Briggs stayed focused, directing his team with practiced precision. Duke, cover the left. Doc, keep Keller behind you. Jake, watch the ridge. The fight was brutal, but the jammer gave them the edge they needed. When the last Zarkesh fell, twitching in a pool of its own fluids, the silence that followed was deafening. Briggs lowered his rifle, his shoulders heaving with exhaustion. Status report. Still breathing, Duke said, his grin feral. Though I'm pretty sure I just set a new record for bug kills. Keller's stable, Doc said, though her voice was heavy with fatigue. For now. Jake wiped a smear of alien blood from his armor. The jammer worked, but it won't hold up to another attack. I'll need to reinforce it. Briggs nodded, his mind already turning to their next move. They couldn't stay here. The Zarkesh would adapt, as they always did. But now they had a weapon, one born of human ingenuity and desperation. As the team regrouped, Briggs caught a glimpse of something on the horizon, a faint shimmer of light that didn't belong to the sun or the terrain. It could be another Zarkesh hive, or perhaps something even more dangerous. Whatever it was, they had no choice but to face it. Briggs glanced at his team, battered but unbroken. They had survived this far, not through brute strength, but through sheer determination and creativity. And they would keep fighting, no matter what the alien planet threw at them. "Pack up," he said, his voice steady. "We move out in 5. We're not done yet." The shimmer on the horizon grew more distinct as the team advanced, its shifting colors a stark contrast against the desolation of Zanthera 7. It wasn't just light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, a rhythmic signal that set Briggs's nerves on edge. Every step toward it felt like a gamble, but retreat wasn't an option. Not now. Not with the Zarkesh undoubtedly regrouping for another attack. Doc Owens walked beside him, her bioscanner beeping softly. "The signal's getting stronger. It's definitely artificial." "Zarkesh hive tech?" Briggs asked, his voice low. "Could be," Doc replied. "Or something older. Whatever it is, it's powerful. The electromagnetic interference is spiking." Behind them, Duke kept his rifle trained on their flank, his mouth set in a grim line. "Great. We're walking straight into the light show. Anyone else feel like a bug about to hit a zapper?" "Nobody asked for commentary, Duke," Briggs said without looking back. His focus was locked on the landscape ahead, a series of jagged formations that seemed to grow sharper and more alien as they approached the source of the signal. Big Jake Carter trudged behind them, lugging the modified jammer. The device emitted a steady hum, keeping any stray Zarkesh signals from coalescing. "Cap, this thing's holding up, but it's running hot. We're on borrowed time. We'll make it count," Briggs said. He glanced at Keller, still pale and barely conscious but alive. Doc had fashioned a crude stretcher for him, and Duke had taken over carrying the injured soldier. They all bore the weight of this mission, literally and figuratively. The pulse of light led them to a fissure in the rock, a narrow crack that descended into the planet's depths. Briggs peered inside, the faint glow illuminating an interior that shimmered with strange crystalline formations. The hum of machinery echoed faintly, growing louder as if beckoning them. "This is it," Doc said, her voice tinged with a mix of awe and dread. "Whatever's down there, it's not natural. Natural or not, we need answers," Briggs replied. He turned to his team. "Jake, keep the jammer running. Doc, you're with me. Duke, stay topside with Keller and cover our exit." Duke frowned but nodded. "You better come back, Cap. I'm not explaining to command why our fearless leader got fried by alien tech." Briggs offered a faint smile, then motioned for Doc to follow him into the fissure. The descent was slow and treacherous, the air growing colder with each step. The crystalline walls pulsed with light, casting eerie shadows that danced like ghosts. As they reached the chamber below, Briggs stopped short. The room was vast, its walls lined with massive, pulsating crystals that emitted the same rhythmic glow as the signal. In the center stood a towering monolith, its surface covered in the same geometric patterns they'd seen on the Zarkesh. The hum of energy was almost deafening. Doc approached the monolith cautiously, her scanner trembling in her hands. This isn't Zarkesh tech," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's older, way older, but they're using it, repurposing it." Briggs stepped closer, his rifle at the ready. "What does it do?" "I think it's a relay," Doc said, her fingers dancing over her scanner. "A central hub for their communication network. If we can disrupt this, it might cripple their coordination across the region. Can you shut it down?" Doc hesitated, her brow furrowing. "Not without triggering some kind of failsafe. This thing is too advanced." But she trailed off, her gaze locking onto the crystalline structure. "If we overload it, we might cause a chain reaction." Briggs's jaw tightened. "And the downside? The reaction could take us with it." or destabilize the entire area. Briggs nodded, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. Do it. Doc set to work, her hands moving with a surgeon's precision as she manipulated the alien interface. Sparks flew as she rerouted power, her every movement calculated. Briggs kept watch, his eyes scanning the chamber for any signs of the Zarkesh. The air felt heavier, charged with an almost tangible tension. "Cap," Doc said suddenly, "I'm almost there, but we've got company." Briggs turned to see the shadows shift at the edges of the chamber. The Zarkesh were here, their metallic bodies gleaming in the crystalline light. They moved with purpose, their eyes glowing with cold intelligence. "Hold them off," Doc said, her voice steady despite the urgency. Briggs raised his rifle, the sound of gunfire echoing through the chamber. The first wave of Zarkesh charged, their razor-sharp limbs striking sparks against the stone floor. Briggs fired in controlled bursts, aiming for the weak points they'd identified. The aliens were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. "Doc, we're out of time," Briggs shouted as he reloaded, his movements quick but precise. "Just a few more seconds," she called back, her hands a blur of motion. The jammer began to whine, its pitch climbing dangerously high. Big Jake's voice crackled over the comms. "Cap, the jammer's about to blow. If you're going to do something, do it now." "Doc," Briggs barked. "Got it," she yelled, slamming her palm against the monolith. The chamber shuddered as the relay overloaded, the crystals pulsing wildly. A deafening roar filled the air as energy arced between the structures, the light growing blinding. "Run," Briggs ordered, grabbing Doc and hauling her toward the fissure. The chamber erupted in a cascade of light and sound, the shockwave propelling them upward. They emerged into the open air, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Duke was already moving, hauling Keller toward the transport. "What the hell did you do down there?" "Shut them up," Briggs said, his voice hoarse. "Move." The team scrambled onto the transport as the ground began to collapse. The shimmer on the horizon vanished, replaced by a rising plume of dust and debris. The Zarkesh pursuit had stopped, their coordination shattered. As the transport lifted off, Briggs looked out over the devastated landscape. The relay was gone, but the war was far from over. Yet for the first time, they had struck a blow that mattered. Doc slumped beside him, her face streaked with sweat and grime. "Do you think it'll hold them back?" Briggs didn't answer immediately. He stared at the horizon, where the shimmer had once been, now replaced by an uncertain stillness. "For now," he said, "but when they come back, we'll be ready."